Okay, I always like to give these a minute to just make sure that the technology is working and that people are tuning in. Hen Johnson from England, Benjamin from Germany. All right.
Hi, Benjamin.
The crew is here. I'm so excited. Okay, guys, this is exciting. Welcome to yet another episode of Hollywood Kitchen. Here in America, Thanksgiving is coming up in a few weeks. So this will be the first of a couple of Thanksgiving specials we're going to do to get you ready at Hollywood Kitchen. And even for those outside of America, this food is still really, really good. So even if you don't celebrate Thanksgiving in other countries, it's still fun to make this stuff. So I hope that you'll enjoy it. Now, I could not think of a better person to join me for this today than Laura Stoker. She is a professional illustrator, a graphic design artist, does graphic works for Turner Classic Movies, and she is from Ava Gardner's hometown and on the board of the Ava Gardner Museum. So welcome, Laura.
Hello, everyone. Nice to join you today, Carrie.
Yes, and this is our third time to do an episode together. Last Christmas, we did Ava Gardner's holiday cheese ball for her birthday, which is Christmas Eve. Then we did Ava Gardner's blueberry buckle, but those were pre-recorded.
Delicious.
Yes, because we're both on separate coasts and we're busy women with crazy schedules. So this is the first time we are live together, so we can take your questions and it's going to be awesome. We also have a special promotional partner today. So I'm a word from our sponsor in the spirit of old radio. Malibu, California is having their annual Pie Festival today. The Malibu Methodist Church is having a festival of pies. You can go to the following link, malibuumc.org/events. This is sponsored in part by the Malibu United Methodist Church, and you can order sweet pies, you can order savory pies. The church is on Morning View Drive in Malibu, right across from Zuma Beach. And they wanted me to let you know that they are having services again in the sanctuary. And one of the people from that church watches Hollywood Kitchen and kind of wanted me to help promote their Festival of Pies. And frankly, if I lived a lot closer to Malibu, I would be in my car right now picking up like a carload of pies. So I hope that all of you enjoy watching this episode. All right, so back to business here. Some people have asked me to kind of give a 101 about some of these stars before we do our recipe and our deep dive. So Laura, if you met someone that didn't know Ava Gardner and was not familiar with her life, her work, etc., what would you tell them?
Oh, well, of course, there's a lot you can tell them, but to try and keep it high level, Ava Gardner was, of course, very famous, became an international star, was product of the Hollywood studio system. She came to Hollywood as a teenager and became a seasoned actress over the course of her time there. She worked in Hollywood for nearly 5 decades, in film, ultimately a little bit in television as well. She did films in almost every genre imaginable. We'll get to some of that today when we talk about film noir, but she made comedies, musicals, dramas. She made some thrillers. She made political thrillers, all sorts of stuff, horror films. She just sort of worked, and then she worked in television, working in soap opera, miniseries, all that kind of stuff. So she did a little bit of everything, has a very diverse career. Personally, she had a life that was very much, the tabloids loved to cover her because she was very vivacious and just had a lot of zest for life. She loved to take in new places and foods and cultures and all that just to the fullest. She had wonderful friendships, great romances, most notably of which, of course, is with Frank Sinatra. And it's perfect that we're meeting today and having this conversation because November 7th, 1951 is when Ava and Frank were married. So today is their, 70th wedding anniversary.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, could not be more perfect of a day for us to join in the conversation. But also beyond the spotlight, she loved her friends, loved her family, had great ties and loved North Carolina, where she's from, and gave back a lot. She did a lot of things without trying to do it for fanfare or recognition. She was very charitable, very generous, and very, very, very progressive. Her politics and her beliefs and all that really hold up well, from a modern perspective. And she left a wonderful legacy that's still giving back. There is a charitable, in addition to the Ava Gardner Museum, which I'm proud to be a board member of, in Smithfield, North Carolina, her hometown. There's also the Ava Gardner Trust, which is an entity that supports charitable organizations, including the museum, but also St. Jude's and Queen Victoria Hospital in England. And so she continues to support organizations and give back, even though she left us in 1990. She's still very present today.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for that introduction. That was fantastic. And I always like to kind of get the food made first up early in the event, because that way I can relax and eat and listen and enjoy a lot more than once I've actually made this. So we decided that Ava Gardner's Southern Pecan Pie would be just the perfect kickoff to Thanksgiving month here. So I have got the recipe courtesy of the Ava Gardner Museum.
Yes.
And I posted this online, and I will also post it on the Hollywood Kitchen Show blog. So we're gonna get this pie party started.
Yes.
We've got a 9-inch deep pie shell, which I've got right here in my pie pan. And what we'll need to make this are 3 eggs, a ½ teaspoon of vanilla, 1/2 cup of very dark corn syrup, 1/4 cup of melted butter, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I held up the cream when I meant to hold up the melted butter. Okay, cream and melted butter. All right. 1 cup of sugar. Now, my mom is like a pie making genius, and I texted her this recipe, and my mom suggested using dark brown sugar. She said that would help the pie hold together well and really be great for the flavor. So that's what I'm going to use here is dark brown sugar, 1 cup, and then 1.5 cups of chopped pecans. I wound up dicing all these by hand because I accidentally brought the halves instead of halves other time. And then 1/2 cup of halved pecan. So those are all the ingredients. Now, I'm not going to stick this in the oven on camera because this whole kitchen will be a burning inferno and that will be bad. But I will pre-make everything on camera and then I'll show you a final product. Okay, so we're going to melt the butter in the saucepan here. So I get my trusty little hot plate to work. All right. And while the hot plate is gearing up here, let's see. Hang on, it takes a minute to. Oh, come on, plug in, please. Okay. All right, so we've got the melted butter in the saucepan. And then as this heats up, we will add, let's see, the cream, sugar, the corn syrup. Look at that thick corn syrup. This stuff could seriously redo your roof if you were in a pinch and needed to redo your roof. I swear this would do it. Okay, so we add the let's see, the corn syrup, salt, and blend. So we're going to work on that blending part. While I'm getting this all blended together, Laura, I wanted to kind of mention something. When I posted that we were going to do this episode, someone commented, gee, I didn't see Ava as the kind of woman who would be in the kitchen cooking. That's kind of like not what I expected. And one thing that I always try to do in film history is kind of peel back the layer and show these people as real human beings. Because I think with a lot of stars, there's the person the world thinks they know, and then there's the real human being beneath that. And yes, Ava Gardner was a complete glamorous goddess of the silver screen, but she loved to cook. She loved her family. There's a whole other side of Ava. So talk to us while I'm stirring all this. Talk to us about that side of Ava.
Sure. And full disclosure, I've made my pie in advance. I'm not where I can totally make it in the same time with Carrie. So I've made mine early, and we'll share a slice at the end of the episode together.
Yes, we will.
But yes, Ava Gardner loved to cook. it really goes back to her upbringing. Her mother, Molly Gardner, nicknamed Molly, Elizabeth Gardner, was a fantastic cook, loved to cook, and was reported to be the best cook in the county, which I'm sure everybody kind of says that about their grandmother or mother growing up. But she was a fantastic cook, and they grew up. Ava was born into a farming family. They raised tobacco and cotton, and then fell on hard times for various reasons. There was a boll weevil infestation that hurt some of the crops. They had some issues with drought, and then the Great Depression hit. So there was a kind of culmination of several things, which meant their family had to kind of leave the farming industry to some degree and kind of find work elsewhere. And her mother ended up working at a teacherage, which was a boarding house for teachers in the county. And she cooked for the women that were, the educators at the nearby school. And Ava just grew up being in the kitchen with her older siblings, loved to cook. The kitchen and kind of that environment of sharing a meal together, prepping the meal together, being together in the kitchen was very much a part of their family's identity. And that has carried through Ava's life and through her, nieces and nephews and extended family. They all love to cook. They all are great cooks. And Ava did enjoy cooking. She had a large collection of cookbooks that are now housed, several of them are now housed at the Ava Gardner Museum. And we'll talk a little bit about one of those later in our conversation. And she made little notes and would write recipes. In fact, the cheese ball recipe that we shared earlier was a little note that we had found tucked in. It was a recipe just tucked in something else on the back of a postcard. And so she collected recipes, they shared recipes, and there was kind of a big family cookbook, some of which the recipes came from a White House cookbook that Molly Gardner, Ava's mother, loved. But then there were other recipes that the family had. And those were shared by each of Ava's siblings wrote down the cookbook by hand. And Ava Gardner's great niece and namesake, Ava Thompson, who is the co-trustee of the trust, she's a friend and great supporter of the museum and would be a wonderful guest. Maybe she can join us sometime for a future episode. But she has her grandmother's copy. Her grandmother was Ava's older sister, and she has that copy of the recipe book. So the handwritten recipe book. So there's just lots of recipes in the family, and being together as a family. They were a large family. And they liked when Ava would come back home to visit North Carolina, they would get together, they would have big family meals of fried chicken and lots of other Southern staples. And pecan pie was always one of the holiday dishes. In fact, I recently spoke with Ava, and she said there were 3 staples at every holiday meal in the Gardner family: a pecan pie, a baked banana pudding, and ambrosia. So those were the 3. So this, having a pecan pie at the holidays in the Gardner family was something that always occurred. So.
Well, I think we're going to have to do other episodes, Laura, where we make those other 2. In fact, I'm already planning and plotting the future. December of 2022 will mark Ava's 100th.
Yes.
birthday.
Yes.
Fingers crossed, if all goes according to plan. I sure would love to do an episode in North Carolina with you, because that would
be wonderful. We're the museum is kicking off a big. We're still in the planning phases, and we've got some things that we've not fully announced everything yet, or started announcing things yet. But we're going to have an Ava Gardner event in October of 2022 to kind of be the kickoff for a whole year's worth of celebrating Ava's centennial year, where we're going to have programming and things throughout the entire, the rest of 2022 and into 2023, celebrating her 100th birthday. So we will definitely connect for that, and would love to host you at the museum for a live episode.
Oh, that would be amazing. And maybe we could get Ava's great niece, or the niece that you mentioned that was named after her. Oh, that would be so, oh my gosh. Okay. Stuff to look forward to. So this pecan pie recipe, was it Ava's grandmother's, or tell me, do you know the exact origin of this?
So there's a couple pecan pie recipes in the family. And I'm not exactly sure of the exact origin of this one, but in terms of how it got into kind of Ava's life. But I know that she made, she regularly, this would have been a recipe that they made, the pecan pie. There is a variation. When I was talking with her niece, her great niece, Ava Thompson, recently, she said that her side of the family made it with light Cairo syrup. So there's a slight variation. But, as I said, the museum has a catalog of Ava's recipe books and cookbooks and other things. And so this was one that kind of came from that origin. But yeah, so there's it's an adaptable recipe, as you've just done with making it, instead of using the white sugar, using brown sugar. The recipe the one that I made, the first one I made completely to the recipe, and then decided to switch it up and try the light Cairo, since that's what Ava Thompson's family makes it, how they make it. So there's a lot of tweaking you can do with it, but yeah, it would have most likely would have come from kind of that original family recipe collection of recipes that would have belonged to Ava's mother.
And I think that's one thing that makes cooking so special, is looking at how different family members have changed something or tweaked something and passed something down. And to me, there's something really kind of special about that,
Absolutely. And like you said, kind of adapting it to your taste. For those who our viewers who don't know or don't regularly make this type of pie or use the Cairo syrup, which is what the recipe called for, the dark version has more of a molasses. It's made with molasses, so it has more of that flavor. Whereas the light is more of a vanilla flavor. So that's an example of where, if you like the molasses taste, go with the dark, but if you like more of a vanilla flavor, you would go with the light. So I think that's probably how it got changed to some degree in the family, over time, just different tastes.
Okay. So let's see, we've let this cool. So I mixed up the mixture. I'm trying to show the camera, but not pour it all over my kitchen. Okay. So I made the mixture and it's been sitting here a minute, kind of cooling down. So it says, in bowl, beat eggs and add vanilla. So I use this handy mixing bowl because it's got a spout and it makes it really convenient to pour into things. So gonna dump the eggs in here. And okay, stir.
And so the reason you want to let that cool, the butter cool, is because you don't want it to cook your eggs. You want it to be closer to room temperature. So, or you can put a little bit in and temper the eggs and then pour them in if you're making it faster,
Okay. So beat eggs and then add vanilla. Okay, we're going to add our vanilla. All right. This is still a little bit warm, so maybe I should just stir the eggs a little more and sit here for just a few more minutes.
Well, and you made the confession, and I think you did. This was my first time ever making a pecan pie. Never made one before. How I've avoided it all these years, I don't know. But this was my first attempt at it. So my first one was a bit of a learning one. It turned out well, but I didn't quite cook it long enough. The kind of interior was a little bit runny. And then I read later, like, oh, we'll just pop it back in the oven, which I did, and that fixed it. So if anybody who's making this at home has that issue when they take it out and let it rest, which you need to let it rest for a couple of hours really to cool and kind of, it'll settle. It'll kind of be puffed when you take it out of the oven, and then it'll kind of go down a little bit. When you do that, then check the center, and if it's still if it's a little runny, you're going to want to pop it back in the oven for just a little bit. When you get it out of the oven, it should be puffed and it shouldn't jiggle. That's kind of how you tell if the center is cooked enough.
Every Christmas when I go home, my mama makes pecan pie, cherry pie, maybe an apple pie, sweet potato pie. So I've never made a pecan pie myself either. So this is also my first time to do it too. But this recipe is pretty easy, pretty user-friendly, I think. I think this is probably cool enough now at this point. So, okay, so I beated the eggs and add the vanilla, pour in other ingredients and blend. So I'm going to pour all this in the big mixing bowl here. And then it says fold in chopped pecans. So the concept of folding is a bit hard for me. For some reason, I get enthused and I just want to dump everything in bowls. So I kind of have to remind myself, no, you have to fold it in. So I'm going to kind of try to gradually fold things in if I'm capable of that.
Full disclosure, I totally dumped my pecans straight in the bowl too. So I don't, this is the judgment-free zone when it comes to that.
Good. I'm all about judgment-free zones. That is how I like to live my life. So do you have a certain kind of pecan that you use in North Carolina? The reason I ask is that sometimes my mama gets Georgia pecans, and she uses a kind called blonde pecans that are amazing. And I wanted her to send me some, but I thought that would probably be so cost prohibitive to send me this huge box of pecans in time. So,
well, there is a lot of variance in pecans that you can find. You know, you mentioned the type in Georgia. There's a kind in Missouri that's a much smaller pecan that I've had before that's very good. I actually, you know, when I make these recipes, if I can, I want to try and source North Carolina ingredients. So when I was on your Oscar show and we made kind of candied sweet potatoes or candied yams, as they're called. I used sweet potatoes from Johnston County, from where Ava's from. There's a big pecan grower, kind of one county over in Sampson County, in a little town called Turkey, which is appropriate for Thanksgiving. That's a fun place where you can go mail a card for Thanksgiving from the town of Turkey, North Carolina. But there's a company called B&B Pecan Processors, and that's the pecan. And I love pecans and have them in my home regularly for just, you know, eating or putting on a salad or something like that. But these were exceptional. I was really pleased with these and really pleased with how they tasted in the finished pie that I made the first time. And they also have a company called Elizabeth's Pecans, which is a North Carolina kind of specialty pecan. They do chocolate covered pecans and all sorts of stuff. So I did use a North Carolina pecan. It's probably on the larger side of a pecan. I'm not sure how it compares to the ones from Georgia, but it was great. One thing I did read about making pecan pies that you can try to do is actually roast your nuts beforehand too, and that gives them a little even stronger nutty flavor. So that's another option of a way that you can kind of adjust this pie recipe to, you know, to different tastes and change the flavor profile from it a bit.
Roasting the pecans, that's an interesting concept. Wow. I like that. Okay, well, I've been gradually putting in the pecans here. All right, I think we've got it all. So this is what the mix looks like, if anyone can see this on camera. Okay, now gonna try to, all right, pour this into the pie. All right, so I've got my pre-made pie crust here in this.
And it is an unbaked pie crust. That's an important thing to note, not a pre-baked one. Yes, if you're looking for a good pie dough recipe, on the Ava Gardner blog, we have a blog post called Cooking with Ava. And when we've shared recipes online, we do it under that moniker of Cooking with Ava. And there's a pie dough recipe there. So if you want to kind of put another layer to this and make it Ava through and through, you can use the pie dough recipe as well.
Yes, and silly me, this is my first time to ever make a pecan pie. For some reason, I could not find this kind of pie crust, and I kept looking in the freezer section, and I just was like, it doesn't exist. And then I went to the refrigerator section to get something, and it was in the refrigerator section. So I learned a lesson. That's why they keep them, apparently. All right, so now we've got our pecan pie mixture, and we are going to pour this into the show. And then after the episode is over, and hopefully when it cools off a little here in LA, I will stick this in the oven and have another pecan pie ready to roll.
And when we were chatting before the show, you made a great point that this is a very easy pie to make in advance and freeze. It freezes well. So, you know, you can make a couple of them, freeze them, and have one for the holidays later, or give one away as a gift or something like that. You can make several in advance.
Definitely, and I love that about this. So, all right, so this will be going into the oven in just a little bit here. And here's what the finished pie looked like that I did in my test bake. So it's probably kind of dark on the screen, but here's what mine looks like.
Let me show everybody mine. I decided to spell out Ava's name.
Brilliant! I love that. Oh my gosh, that is so cool.
the last little like half cup of pecan halves you can use to decorate the top. That's what goes.
I need to do that right now. I need to
So
decorate.
you can spell out Ava or Carrie or Hollywood Kitchen if we had the smaller pecans, something like that.
Yeah, that would be tricky, but it could be done. It could be done.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So I'm sprinkling my other pecans on here, and I will definitely be posting a picture of the final recipe here when I've gotten that out of the oven. All right, so now the cooking part is done and I can relax and we'll talk about all things Ava. So I didn't know when we decided to do it today that this was the wedding anniversary with Frank Sinatra. I didn't even know that. So this is perfect.
Yeah. Isn't that perfect time? And honestly, when we were planning this and we talked about getting together for this episode a month or more ago, it didn't register with me either until this week. I was like, oh my gosh, look. what serendipity we have of it being on this day. So just worked out perfectly.
I agree. And people will probably ask us questions about this in the Q&A, but that was really one of the great romances in classic Hollywood history, and certainly one of the most interesting as well.
Yeah, it was. It definitely it's interesting. A lot of people today kind of come to Ava sometimes through that relationship. They may not know her films or her image, don't know her from an image or anything like that until they may be fans of Frank's music or become fans of his music. And that's sort of their gateway into learning, well, what movies did he make and what was his life like and all that. And they find out about this great romance. And that's very interesting because if you were to go back in time and be there when their relationship started, Ava was really, they were both huge stars, of course, but her star was really on the rise. And she was on the cusp of doing some of her most well-known films today. And in the early 50s, you had Showboat, Pandora and the Flying Dutchman. By the mid 50s, you had The Barefoot Contessa. You just had all of these really great films that she's really well known for today. But Frank's career was on the decline. He was struggling. His pictures weren't doing well. He had not, it was coming out of the war years and his music was not as popular as it had been. And he ultimately got dropped by MGM. He got dropped by his recording studio, and all of that happened at the same time that this relationship was heating up. And of course, they ultimately did get married, and they were both very passionate, slightly temperamental people, headstrong, and had an independent streak with each other. And they just sort of they loved each other so much, and they loved each other for the rest of their lives. Ava said herself that they were kind of in love eternally or lovers forever. And but they couldn't live with each other long term. They were too similar of personality types to make it last. But they stayed in touch. They stayed great friends. They stayed in contact for the rest of their lives, and really did love each other. And I think they were probably the love of each other's lives. Certainly for Ava, he was the love of her life. So,
I think it's interesting. I wish someone would do this. I don't think I'm the person to, but write a book about the history of Hollywood power couples, because I don't think that's been done. And frankly, I think that's fascinating because a lot of times there's never a time when both of their careers are at maximum peak. There's always one that is doing super well, one not so much, and then up and down. And then you factor in gender, where it's a blow to the man's pride, for example, if the woman is doing better, and then vice versa. And then you've got pride, you've got ego, you've got gender, you've got Hollywood, the wealth, the fame, the pressure of the paparazzi, the scrutiny. You've got all these elements that go into it that kind of magnify, I think, the conflict and the problems. And you see almost every few years there emerges some huge power couple in the entertainment industry, and you just kind of wonder how any of these people ever make it work, because it's hard enough in life as it is, but then when you put all the pressures of all these other situations to bear on it, I think that would be a fascinating case study. If someone out there needs a book idea, that one's
that's a great one. And with Frank and Ava, Ava said herself in her autobiography that they never felt pressure. There was frustration because Frank's career was in a slump, So he had moments where he was frustrated with that, but they never had like a jealousy in terms of competition with their careers like, well, I'm jealous of you because you're more successful. It was more that he was just had some bouts of depression and that sort of thing because he wasn't, his career was just in that funk in that period of time. And of course it was his role in From Here to Eternity, which, as one story goes, Ava helped him get that part. There's lots of stories about that, but there is a story of Ava helping, influencing, speaking with, Harry Cohn's wife and saying, that husband of mine would be great for this part. Give him test him, please. And he needs this role. He'd be great. And that, her lobbying helped him get that part, which is what turned his career around. So, there was support there, and she would go to his concerts and he would come, fly out when she was filming Magambo and working on that. So they tried to make it work, but it just wasn't, their jealousies were more romantic and kind of, because you're making movies with the most attractive people in the world, there's a lot of opportunity for romantic jealousy to emerge in those relationships. That's just one of the other pressures that would be put on these power couples, especially back then. So, but yeah, they made it, they sort of started the divorce proceedings in 53 and then finalized their divorce in 57, but they rekindled that relationship several times over the years. And like I said, they talked very frequently on the telephone, and he sent her favorite flower, for those who don't know, was a yellow rose. And on every year for her birthday, he would send her a large bouquet of yellow roses. Wherever she was living in the world, that's what he would send her. And she would keep it on her mantle in place and let the flowers just dry in place until the next year when she got her next bouquet and she would replace it. So
it's so funny you say this. My birthday was last week and a friend gave me a bouquet of yellow roses and they're over there on the counter, like outside of the frame. Oh my, okay, I need to get those in a minute and replace them.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so that just shows how they kept this connection, and they were always there for each other, supporting each other, not financially. That's a common rumor that is told, that he supported her financially or he contributed. Ava was financially independent her entire, adult life. And left, that's how she was able to establish a trust in her lifetime that continues today. The only thing that he did do was when she was having some health issues, he wanted her to see a specialist in LA, and she didn't want to travel. And she was like, no, I really don't want to do it. And he said, no, I've sent a plane. You're getting on the plane. You're coming. I've got you booked with this person. You're going to be seen. And that's the only medical bill that he, if you want to call it that he paid for. But everything else she handled herself. But they were just supports for each other and good friends, and there was always that element of love between the two of them.
Very cool. And you don't ever hear stories about Ava being super extravagant with money, because quite a lot of the stars were, and understandably so. When you're being handed millions, why not, live it up? But you don't hear stories about Ava just spending money like wildfire. At least I've never really heard stories about her doing that.
I think she, for the most part, managed her money well. I mean, she lived in beautiful places. If no one's seen the photos of her residence in Spain, or her apartment in Ennismore Gardens in England, in London, I mean, it's beautiful and it's decked out with antiques. And she loved China, and she loved beautiful furnishings and draperies, and very kind of ornate looking, and she liked nice clothes and Gucci purses and, that kind of Ferragamo shoes and all of that. But I think she managed her money well. And then when she needed more money, she'd find an opportunity to get work, and hey, I'll go make this movie, and that'll handle things. But yeah, I don't think she ever had any major financial issues. I think she, for the most part, managed everything well enough. And like I said, was able to establish the trust was initially established to help support her two remaining sisters who outlived her, two of her older sisters. And after she passed away, and then one of the sisters passed away, the trust was sort of reshaped to be more of a charitable entity and support various charities over the years. So
that's excellent. I wanted to also talk about, it is November or Noirvember all over the internet. And the whole point of it is to kind of raise awareness and spread the word about incredible film noir books and music and movies, and a genre that I know you and I certainly love. And you talked about how Ava Gardner worked in almost every film genre. And she worked in noir. I believe she made what, like 3?
It depends on how you define. She appears in her first kind of brush with noir is in the 1942 film Kid Glove Killer, which starred Marsha Hunt and Van Heflin, and has an uncredited role as a car hop in that movie. And so it's a very small part, but she did meet Van Heflin, who became a good friend, and Van Heflin's wife Frances was one of Ava's closest friends. So that was the best part of being on that production, is that she got to meet Van and his wife. After that, she went to Hollywood in 41 when she was still a teenager. And it took her about 5 years in bit parts, lots of uncredited roles, before she started to have, speaking parts and a little more prominent roles. And it didn't happen until 1946 that she was loaned out to make the noir Whistle Stop with George Raft at United Artists, that she was people started realizing, hey, she's pretty good. She's got something here. And she really fit that kind of femme fatale role quite well. And once she did Whistle Stop, and that became kind of an unexpected hit, MGM loaned her out a second time that year, 46, to Universal to make The Killers. And that is certainly one of her most iconic roles today. And one of her best, really. It's just a really great character, and she does a great job with it. And it's very much, she's still learning her craft, but you can tell what kind of a formidable star she was going to be, and screen presence at that point. And it was, thanks to those 2 films, the noir genre, that really helped launch her career. And she kind of stayed in that. She made lots of other films in that period, from making those 2, and then ultimately making a film like Singapore in 47, which was a noir, of course. And then she made The Bribe in 49. So kind of from 46 to 49, she appeared in those noir as well as other films. But it was noir that really kind of launched her to more prominence, and helped MGM realize just what a potential starlet they had on their hands, and that somebody, that she was capable of a lot more than making just kind of pinup photos and being car hops and perfume girls in various films and that kind of thing. So thanks to noir, that's really what catapulted her to the next level.
And I think one of the things that I think is so rich about the film noir genre is it often gave a lot of women the best roles of their career.
Absolutely.
Like the meatiest, the juiciest, the sexiest, the most just complicated. It just yielded brilliant parts for women.
Well, and that's a great point. I mean, that's the thing. They were complicated women. They had stories, they worked in the nightclub at night, and they broke hearts during the day, or whatever. And in a film like she had a chance to play somebody with amnesia. She had a chance to play a kind of woman on the run, all that kind of stuff. Just gave her a lot of ability to flex. And I think at that point in her career, when she's in her early 20s, really trying to okay, I'm gonna invest in this craft and learn how to be an actor, and know what I'm doing, and be professional, be prepared, and all of that. I think that those roles just gave her the opportunity to really get around something a little more meaty than what she had been doing up to that point. So I think you're absolutely right. And that happened with a lot of stars.
Yeah, and in studying Hollywood history, what I think is interesting is, in a lot of cases, you'll have a great star they're not yet a star, but you can obviously see they've got the goods. And their home studio never really knows what to do with them. So what happens is often they loan them to another studio who figures out exactly what to do with them. And then they go back to their home studio and they're like, okay, now I'm a star. Now someone knows how to use me. And it just seems like time and again, you see that happening. And you just look at Ava Gardner and think, how can you not know what to do with her? I mean, please. you know?
Well, that happened, that's a criticism that Ava had in her lifetime of MGM. She said several times that MGM was probably not the best studio for her, even though it, had more stars than In the Heavens and all of that. And she was happy to have the opportunity, and blown away that she, was a teenager plucked from kind of, small town North Carolina to make it in Hollywood. But they really struggled with what to do with her, and they could loan her out and make a lot more money than they were paying. At the time that she made The Killer, she was making about $200 or so, and they a month, and they would loan her out for like $1,000 a week to Universal, I think it was. So they were making great money off of loaning out these stars. But luckily, those studios, like you said, they saw what was there. They saw the potential of what these actors or actresses could do. And Ava benefited from that. As much as she was frustrated with the loan outs, mainly around pay, because she just thought that was unfair. But being able to get those opportunities to do those roles, and she realized that those were the roles that really put her on the map.
Well, and Ava in the studio system were not a comfortable fit, because Ava was such a fiery, independent, free spirit. And that does not really go in line with the studio system. I think she had a famous quote. I hope I don't get this wrong. It said, MGM's the only, it's like a department store where the mannequins get to go home at night, or something to that effect, meaning you are just basically a property of this company. And I'm probably getting that quote messed up, but the spirit of the quote.
Exactly. And you and we've had a little bit of that conversation before, but you're so right that, when she went to Hollywood as a teenager, they wanted to make her look like an MGM star. They wanted to do her makeup in kind of the MGM style of the day. They wanted to pluck her eyebrows. They wanted to do all of the, didn't like that she had a cleft chin and all this sort of stuff, which they didn't like all the things that were distinctive about her, which is crazy. But she sort of, she hung in there, and she found opportunities to buck the system anytime, when she could, especially, early on when she met and married Mickey Rooney, and then later when she divorced Mickey Rooney and then married Artie Shaw. She really took control of her own life, and she would be the first to say, I made some mistakes along the way, but honey, I've had a good time, so I'm not going to complain. And that was very much her mantra. And she found ways to kind of flex her independence, and not let the studio just kind of take her whole identity away. She did, work on her accent, and get rid of it. And I wish I've never been able to do that myself, but she was able to, she did what she needed to do to succeed in that respect. Learned, proper poise and all the elocution classes, all that sort of stuff that they all went through. But she was like, no, you're not going to pluck my eyebrows, or you're not going to fill in my cleft chin. That's what makes me look like me. And then as she got older and was able to be more selective in roles and have a little more clout, she did stand up to the system and say, no, MGM, I'm not right for that role. I don't want to make that movie. And no matter what the consequences, she did, kind of stand up for herself. Early on, in making Whistle Stop, she was actually, or actually not Whistle Stop, later with Singapore, she was assigned that film or loaned out to do that film. At the same time, she was making The Hucksters with Clark Gable, which was her first time working with Clark Gable. She worked with him 3 times in total. But the studio came to her and was like, we're gonna loan you out for this. And she didn't feel like she had the clout at the time to say, well, that's just too much. So she worked on The Hucksters during the morning, would have a break for lunch, and then be whisked off to film to another studio to work on Singapore. And she felt like, if I say no to MGM, they're gonna suspend me, and I'm not gonna have my, $200 to pay for my food or my rent or anything like that. But those little kind of issues that happened along the way early in her career, it gave her a lot more strength later in her career, where she was like, no, that's not right for me, or this is the personal decision I want to make. I want to be with Frank Sinatra. I don't care what you say. I'm going to marry him, that kind of thing. So, it was tough along the way, but I think she found her voice pretty early on.
And it also seemed too like moving to Europe was a great thing for Ava because she could sort of escape the prying eyes of Hollywood and also the control of the studio system. You can't control someone when they're doing the flamenco in Spain and totally on another continent, right? So
Yeah, and that was very rare. I mean, that was a very daring move. I mean, she moved. She spent, she first went to Europe when she was making Pandora and the Flying Dutchman, and that was the film that introduced her both to England and to Spain. And she just fell in love with Europe, and ended up living in both countries later in life. And making that move at the height of her career when she was still a contract player, and saying, no, this is the right choice for me. It was, she made that move when things were sort of breaking up with her relationship with Frank, and she needed the space and the distance because the tabloids just hounded them relentlessly and didn't really give them any privacy. And they, their relationship probably would have lasted longer if they didn't have that pressure on them all the time and that constant like being followed and all of that. And moving away gave her the space she needed to kind of determine, to have that self-determination of what's going to be next for my life and my career and personal life and all of that, and make tough decisions at times. But it was definitely the right move for her. In the last part of her career, latter part of her career, especially after she left her contract, or her contract with MGM ended, she made most of her films in Europe, and found opportunities to work there. So
yes, Ava, I like to think, had guts of titanium steel.
absolutely. I totally agree.
Now, during the pandemic, the Ava Gardner Museum has been doing some work inside the museum. So talk to us about the update with what's going on with the museum these days.
Yeah, so, like lots of institutions, we had to sort of reevaluate and pivot some at the beginning of the pandemic. And really, we were already doing a lot of robust work with regards to our social presence. That was one of the ways that I got involved with the museum, was volunteering. And then they asked me to join the board, and really amping up our writing more vigorously about Ava and sharing more things from the collection and all of that. So we'd really done that. And then we started expanding and doing some virtual exhibits. We dipped our toe in that and have continued that into this year. And also doing a virtual program that's called Ava Chats. And we've got one of those that's going to launch soon. That's actually a tour of we pre-recorded it. The previous ones we've done live, but this one was pre-recorded, and it's a tour of two of our new exhibits, which are around Ava's film costumes and television costumes. But at the beginning of this past year, we had reopened, to under restrictions, but had reopened. And then we had a water leak in one of our restrooms, and we had some flooding. Nothing was damaged in terms of our artifacts and collections, but we had to redo the flooring, we had to paint, so we were closed for several months. So that was a real frustration after we had just started, reopening. But we're back open. And while we were closed, we went ahead and continued with plans of executing new exhibits. And we had 2 in the works, and then we ended up redoing a couple of our other artifact cases with smaller exhibits. But we did these 2 really large exhibits, again, one about her film costumes, and it spans almost the entirety of her film career, and then her television work, which was in the early to mid 80s. So we have a whole exhibit dedicated to that. And we talk about the costume designers that she worked with and the film roles, and kind of how the costumes show how she evolved as an actress, and cover again the diversity of her filmography. So we have a lot of fun things going on, and hopefully everybody will follow us on social and check us out when we make announcements and share things like that, and go to our website. We've got a lot of wonderful articles on the blog where we write about her films and her life, and do the deeper dive like you were talking about earlier, and trying to get to know the real person and all the many facets of their lives, which Ava's a fascinating person, and has a lot of things that we can share and talk about.
And it's avagardner.org, right?
Yes, avagardner.org. Mm-hmm.
And also, you do have a gift shop, right, in the museum that's virtual too. I want to encourage people, because I know a lot of small businesses, museums have been hit so hard in the pandemic, and also with a lot of these shipping issues that are going on. If you're going to do Christmas shopping, do it early. If you can, support small business, support independent artists, and support museums. And so I would encourage you, Ava is the gift that will never stop giving. I think we can all agree on that. So if you go to avagardner.org, there is a museum where you can, a museum gift shop virtually, where you can buy all sorts of goodies, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're going to be launching we do a yearly calendar every year that's very popular with our fans. And we're working on that one right now, and it's going to be coming out hopefully by the end, mid to late November. And we're going to be doing each year, the last couple years, we've done a holiday gift guide to kind of showcase some of our new merchandise and things that we do and or that we have offered for the holiday season. So we'll be sharing that with some updates of some new goodies in the gift shop. So there's lots of ways. And then we have a membership program where you can be an Ava advocate, and you can get our newsletter and some other things, some other advantage discounts to things in the gift shop and to entry to the museum and all that sort of stuff, and some discounts to some of our virtual programming. So well worth checking all of that out. And that, as you said, that's a great way to support the museum and help us continue in our mission of sharing her life and legacy with the world.
Absolutely. Now, Laura, you have a presentation for us, right?
Yeah, you and I were talking about different things we could do for this episode. And when I've been on before, I've not brought with me or shared any artifacts from the museum. And I thought, that it would be really neat to share a few things that were sort of home and kitchen related, and share a few stories with those artifacts. And so I put together just a little kind of PowerPoint that I can share my screen and show everybody, and we can talk through some of those items if that's if everybody would enjoy that, which I think it's neat. It's always neat to kind of see how the artifacts, just like with the recipes, the artifacts show that personal side of someone.
Absolutely. So can you share the screen?
Yes, I'm going to do that right now. Give me 1 second. And then I will do this. So hopefully everybody can see this, and I'm trying to follow along on Facebook. Can everybody see? Yay, okay. Looks like it's up. So talking about Ava in the kitchen, here's a picture of her at her mixer. We'll start with. So this is a really neat artifact that's currently on display in the museum. This is a chicken platter, or like a kind of large platter dish. It's by Noritake. It's the pattern's called Romance, and it was produced originally in 1912 and then produced for about another 10 or 20 years after that. This platter belonged to Ava's mother, Molly. And what's really unique about this piece, and I'll show a picture next, is this photo right here. So this is a photo of Ava's mother, Molly, on the far left, holding the platter filled with fried chicken. And in the middle is Mickey Rooney, and then there's Ava Gardner beaming on the far other side of the photo. And right after Ava and Mickey married, they had a short honeymoon, and then Ava accompanied Mickey on a war bond tour that went to multiple cities. They came to North Carolina and went to the base in Fayetteville, North Carolina, called Fort Bragg. And after that, they traveled to Raleigh on their way up to Washington, D.C., where they were going to be there for President Roosevelt's birthday. And we're going to be attending a party for that. But they stopped in Raleigh and met and spent time at one of Ava's sister's homes, which was in Raleigh. And her mother, Molly, came up, as did other family members, and they had a big meal. And Ava's mother was dying of cancer at the time, and everyone knew she was quite sick. And she, got dressed up and got her hair done and all of that, and she cooked this big meal to welcome her new famous son-in-law. And of course, at the time, Ava was just a new contract player, and she would sign autographs to people as Mrs. Mickey Rooney. She had not even, had not really been in anything yet. So Molly was very excited to meet her son-in-law because she was not able to attend the wedding. And Mickey put on the performance of a lifetime that evening. He kept Molly laughing and hugged her and was incredibly kind and sweet to her and made her feel like she was the superstar. And Ava later said that she loved Mickey when she dated him, and she loved him when she married him, and she even loved him when they divorced, but she never loved him more than she did that night when he made her mother so happy. So that's just a really neat artifact that we have that shows this other side of Ava and her life and relationships and all of that. So that's just, I love that story. This is just a simple walnut cracker that was given to us by one of Ava's nieces, Mary Grantham, who is a member of the board and is very involved with the museum. And she donated this artifact to the museum. This is one set of Ava's china that we have on display.
That's beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful? It is a Minton. It's by a company called Minton. They're an English company. And this is, I'm probably going to butcher this, but I think you pronounce it cockatrice or something like that. But it's a mythical figure. That's what that figure that's the close up on the other side of the screen is. It's kind of a mix between a dragon and a bird. And this was a popular china pattern. It was made from, kind of in that early 50s, up to the early 50s period. When probably Ava would have bought it, but she had this in her London home and now it's part of our collection. So it's just a beautiful pattern. And it just shows you kind of the taste that she had. She loved a lot of color. A lot of the decor in her home was very colorful and bright. And of course that carries over into the china pattern. This is a decanter that we recently added to the collection. That was a gift that she gave to a friend of hers, a gentleman named Paco Miranda, who was the pianist at the Ritz Hotel in Madrid. And they were good friends. And she loved giving gifts to people. She loved giving watches. She liked giving pearl necklaces. And we think that Paco collected decanters, and that's why she gave him this decanter, but it's got an inscription on it and it's signed with her Ennismore Gardens address, and she gave this to him in the mid-1980s, in 1984. This shows you, these are some of her towels and linens. She loved her monogram on things. So her tablecloths, her napkins, her towels, all of that had monograms. And she had variations on the monograms from a simple A, or not really a simple, it's beautifully embroidered, but an A, AG. Then the one in the bottom left corner is her full initials. Ava Lavinia Gardner was her name, so ALG. The purple towel has just AG. And then the one that's in yellow, that's a neat one because her sister, Bappy, or Beatrice, her nickname was Bappy, was very close with Ava. And when Ava first came to Hollywood, Bappy accompanied her as her chaperone. And Bappy was sort of was instrumental in Ava being discovered early in her career. But these were towels that were jointly monogrammed, so that there's a B on the left and an A on the right. So, and then of course the G for Gardner. This was a Christmas pattern or two examples of some Christmas plates that Ava had by Spode, which is another English porcelain china maker. The left is a little saucer. That's a very popular pattern of theirs, a Christmas tree pattern. And then the other piece is an egg cup that is in a holly pattern, holly and berry pattern. That's just really neat. This is a photo of Ava, and I'm going to look at my list to make sure I get everybody right. So Ava, if you can't guess, is sort of in the back middle of the photo. This is a family dinner, and they're having, looks like fried chicken and some other Southern staples. And then on the left of Ava, in the blue shirt and the black shirt with the white collar, those are, I believe, her sister-in-law. One is her sister-in-law or a relative through marriage, a wife of one of her cousins, I believe. And then the lady next to her is Rose, which was her sister-in-law. The gentleman at the back of the photo is Jack, Ava's older brother. And then peeking her head kind of to the side is her sister Myra. That's the one who lived in Raleigh, and that's the house they went to, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's right. And then where you can't fully see the other sister that's in the middle, but that's Elsie Mae. And that is the lady that's over the trust now, Ava Thompson. That's her grandmother, Elsie Mae. And then that's Mary Edna in the front of the photo, smiling. And she's a member of our board. And she's the one who donated the walnut cracker to the collection. But that just showed that was taken in Smithfield, I think, when she was home on a visit and they were sharing a big Southern family meal. There was a restaurant. Jack was an entrepreneur and had lots of different businesses in the town of Smithfield. Several of the buildings that he built and had his businesses in are still standing. And this was a restaurant called In-N-Out, not to be confused with the In-N-Out of California, but this was the In-N-Out Grill, and it was a little hamburger joint in town, and the building's still there. And the photo on the far left is Ava holding her brother's hand, Jack, and they had the Gardner family crest under the big sign that said In-N-Out Grill. So that's what they're standing near. And the other two photos are of Ava working in the kitchen. When she would come home after this restaurant opened, she would go and they would have dinner there and hang out and talk to people and, reminisce with locals who knew the family. And she would sometimes go behind the counter and help flip burgers, or she would sometimes work the register just for fun. Just again, when she would come home, it was very much a relaxed experience, very down, she was very down to earth. She was very laid back and loved to, she found coming back to North Carolina just a very fun and relaxing experience. And she tried to do it as much as she could in between her busy work schedule. This is one of the cookbooks that we have that belong to Ava. This is a soul food cookbook that she bought from Bloomingdale's for, I think, $3.95. The price tag is still on it in the corner.
Oh, that's so cool.
And Ava was the co-chair of a large benefit that happened in May of 1969 that was held at the Waldorf Astoria, and it was to benefit an organization called the Free Southern Theater. And it was an organization that came out of the civil rights movement in an effort to try and get theatrical productions into underserved rural communities of color in the South. And the organization had been around about 6 years, and they were trying to kind of build up their funding. And Ava agreed to co-chair this large event at the Waldorf Astoria. It was the first time the hotel had ever tried serving Southern food or soul food specifically. And they didn't really know what they were doing. The reports of the food was that it wasn't that great, but they tried, and they tried to serve. They served it family style, which was again the first time they had ever done that. But this was a huge event, and there's tons of great photos out there for anybody who searches this event to see just all the wonderful celebrities that were there. And I'll show some pics in a second. But when we were cataloging the book collection, which was some catalog work that was done earlier this year, we stumbled across this book and found her notes in it where she wrote turnips, greens, black-eyed peas, salt pork, corn, new potatoes, okra, dark corn syrup. And of course, we used our dark corn syrup in our pie today. But we think that it's very likely that she wrote these notes and bought this cookbook in preparation of that event, because the publication date of this book would align with her buying it in advance of that. And we think she might have gotten this to share some recipes with the Waldorf Astoria, because the final menu for the event, it included some of these dishes. It had, some of the side dishes, and it had pecan pie that was served. And so we think that was the connection with that. But then here are some pictures from the event for everybody to see. So that's Ava on the far left in a fantastic outfit. And then just a few of the stars that attended, Rosalind Russell, Jack Lemmon, Lauren Bacall, Gregory Peck was there with his wife, Veronique, and he and Gregory and Veronique sat at the same table with Ava. So there's some great photos of the two of them sharing their meal together and chatting. And then Robert Ryan, Myrna Loy, I'll skip Lena Horne for just a second. And, you have Harry Belafonte, Muhammad Ali, and then, but they had a performance at this event too. There was a kind of a concert that Brock Peters was the host and Ed McMahon was the MC, and Duke Ellington performed, and he accompanied Lena Horne and Liza Minnelli when they both.
My gosh.
It's just like, if I could go back in time and be at an event, this is the one I would love. This is one I would love to be at. The event was $100 a plate meal, and they raised $50,000 to support the Free Southern Theater. So it was just a really cool thing. It was the only time Ava did something like that public. For the most part, the rest of her charitable efforts and other things were very much private more intimate one-on-one or direct donations and things to support organizations. It was a big to-do for her to do this, and kind of outside of her comfort zone. And she jokingly said there's a great article in a Jet issue of Jet magazine all about this event that has some of these photos and a lot of others. And she said that she probably it would have been better if she was in the kitchen helping them cook the food. Because the food wasn't so great, but nonetheless, it was a successful event and did what it was intended to do, which was benefit this organization. So those are just a few of the artifacts I thought would be neat to share with everybody. I hope you all enjoyed that, and hopefully, let me see if I got out of it.
And I'm thrilled that Ava was so progressive in her support of the African American community and in the arts and in so many areas.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So
and I think it's time to have.
I need to cut a piece too. Let me cut
some whipped cream on top of mine.
Yeah.
All right. And after we get off camera, I will put the pre-made one over here in the oven for 45 minutes. Here is feast your eyes on the magnificence, guys.
It looks good. I'm excited.
It does. It's been hard to sit here and not focus on scarfing it down this whole time.
Okay. Ooh. Okay, I've got did you do a little ready whip or something on it?
Yes, I surely did. I surely did.
So it's a sweet pie. And that's another thing you can do if you adjust the recipe to use a little less of the syrup or a little less of here's my slice, a little less of the sugar. You could also add a little more salt if you want to adjust the flavor a bit. But having that little bit of ice cream or ready whip or something with it's going to help cut the sweetness a bit. Are we ready?
Ready.
Here goes.
All right.
That's so
good. Oh my God.
That's really good.
We should open the virtual floor for questions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'll take one more bite of my pie.
Me too. Oh my God.
I wish you all were here to eat or had one of these at home to eat with us. But it's really good.
Okay. All right. Let me see if any questions are popping up. I've had some issues on my phone, unfortunately, with questions not popping up till way later in the day.
Yeah, let me see here.
It's soon. It's bringing in the sound. Hang on just a second for me.
So our friend Benjamin, I see a question from him earlier that asked, which films did Ava herself consider as her best? The Killers, Magambo, and Barefoot Contessa were probably the ones that she thought the most of. She said in her autobiography that Magambo was probably the pinnacle of her career as an actor. And for those of you who don't know, she was nominated. That's the only time she was nominated for an Oscar, was for her performance in that. And she's quite, if you've not seen it, she's really great in it. I think she also really liked the end result of The Night of the Iguana. I know that her family liked that role, or her friends, because they felt like that captured some of her own essence, just how laid back she is in that film, and relaxed and that kind of thing, and casual a little bit. I think that shows a little more close to what her personality might have been like. Not totally by any means, because it is a character, but just there's some essence there that was similar to her. Leslie Apple asked, what was her marriage to Artie Shaw like? It was not the greatest. Her courtship with Artie was wonderful. She met Artie through Van Heflin's wife, who we talked about earlier, Frances. Frances introduced Ava to Artie. He had just come back from the war and she was really blown away when she met him. And really, really loved him, probably more than she should have, I guess. He was not the nicest to her once they got married. While they dated, she would go with, she had not yet made The Killers or Whistle Stop, and had not kind of transitioned from the car hop roles to the femme fatale roles. So she had a lot more time on her hands, and she would go with him when he would play at venues, and she loved that. She loved music, had a large record collection, and that's a large portion of that is currently in the collection at the museum in Smithfield. And she loved jazz, and she grew up actually as a young teenager. She listened to Artie's music, and loved to dance and kind of all of that, and loved being with him and seeing him work on stage and experiment with music and meeting other musicians. And he was very intellectual, and that really impressed. She was really impressed by that, by how intelligent and the things that he could talk about that she had really not talked about with other people. And he was just more serious and that kind of thing. But once they got married, he started nitpicking at her and making her feel inadequate. And so much so that he basically made her feel like she wasn't very intelligent. And she ended up taking an IQ test, and she was like, got the results, and she was pretty smart, and kind of, I told you so. And she did take some extension classes through UCLA when they were together, because she felt inadequate about her education. She had graduated from high school and was in a secretarial program at the time that she was discovered in college, at a college called Atlantic Christian College, which is now Barton College in North Carolina, in the town of Wilson. And she left school to go pursue this opportunity in Hollywood. So she didn't finish her degree, and she felt a little inadequate with that. And she attributed Artie as being the partner that kind of ignited her to get back into that. She always was interested in things and reading and all of that, but that kind of him being kind of a jerk to her made her go, well, I'm going to show you just how smart I am. And, and she did. And the rest of her life, she was an avid reader, had a huge, a book collection, met all kinds of writers and, intellectuals, and could talk just about it to people about just about any topic. So if there was any good out of that relationship, it was that. But she had a good rapport with all of her husbands and stayed on friendly terms with them even after the divorces. So let's see. What other questions do we have, Carrie?
Let's see. Let me see if I can get my screen to pop up here.
By the way, just thanks everybody for joining. I'm excited to see so many people on.
Monique is saying, can you imagine ordering a burger and Ava walks in? Yeah, that would have blown my mind.
Or Ava actually making your burger. That's even more amazing. We had a nice little message from Annette. Annette recently, who's been on your show, who runs Hometowns to Hollywood. She recently visited me in North Carolina, and we did a tour of the museum and did a little driving tour. So anytime anybody comes to the museum, please reach out to me. And if it's where I can, I'd love to meet you there and show you around. And like we said, Carrie, hopefully you can come and we can do an episode in the museum. That would be awesome.
I want to do an Ava Centennial celebration in the museum.
I would love it.
And that's going to be on Hollywood Kitchen next weekend too, which I'm going to make a big announcement about that on Monday morning. But yeah, she's been a frequent contributor, and she's a friend. She's fantastic.
She's wonderful, wonderful. Let's see.
Benjamin wants to know, did Ava meet Ernest Hemingway?
She did. For those of you who don't know, she appeared in 3 films based off Hemingway's work. The first being The Killers, the second being The Snows of Kilimanjaro, and the third being The Sun Also Rises. Hemingway, she liked Hemingway as a writer, and she read his work long before she met him. When she appeared in The Killers, Hemingway is said to have felt that The Killers was the best film adaptation ever made of anything he wrote. Even though it's loosely based on The Killers, if you've ever read his short story, pretty much the first portion of the film follows the plot and the kind of structure of his short story. And then the rest of the film is made up to kind of explain the actions of the first part. And it, you know, got your flashbacks and all those great noir devices that are employed in the film. And Hemingway got a copy of when the producer of the film, Mark Hellinger, acquired the rights to the film. It was the highest anyone had ever paid for the rights of a film up to that point. And it was like $36,000 for the rights of The Killers. And when he made the film and finished it, he gave Hemingway a copy of it so he could screen it himself and have a copy of it. And years later, and I'll tell when they met, but years later when Ava did meet Hemingway and spent time with him at his homes, he would pull that movie out and want to watch it, which is great. And actually, after he saw Ava in The Killers, years later when they were making The Snows of Kilimanjaro at 20th Century Fox, he stipulated that he wanted Ava to appear in the film because he thought she did a wonderful job in The Killers. So he lobbied for her, and they had never met at that point. And then I think it was around 1954, Ava was in Spain, and she had started dating a bullfighter, Luis Miguel Dominguez. I hope I said that right. If I didn't, I'm sorry. But they had started dating, and he was friends with Hemingway. And Ava had a kind of health crisis. She had this bad abdominal pain. They rushed her to the hospital, and she had kidney stones. She was in the hospital for a few days, and her bullfighter boyfriend stayed at her side lovingly through the whole time. He was very sweet, and stayed at her side through the whole thing, except he said, "I've got to run an errand. I'll be right back." And he left, and he came back with Hemingway. And that's how Ava met Hemingway. And then they immediately hit it off and became great friends and spent a lot of time together before his passing years later. But when fast forward to 1957, when they were working on The Sun Also Rises, Hemingway again said, "If you're going to make this, Ava needs to be in it." So he lobbied for her even before he met her, and then after he met her, even more so. So that's how Ava got kind of one of the ways she got cast in the 2 second adaptations of Hemingway's work. So
Hemingway had great taste.
Absolutely. What other questions do we have?
See, Monique wants to know if you met Ava.
No. Oh, I wish. She passed away in 1990. I was a little kid then. And I lived in the area, and my parents owned a florist at the time. And my dad said, "We should go take some flowers over to the funeral home." And I knew who she was, but I had not seen any of her movies at that time. I was very small. And I wish we had gone, because that would have been amazing to be able to say that I went to her funeral. But no, I never had that wonderful opportunity. But I feel like I know her. I feel like I spend a lot of time with her and working with the museum and volunteering with them and all. And her family is just as nice and down to earth as you would hope they would be. They are so kind and so supportive of everything that the museum does, and are so engaged. You know, like I was talking earlier about the trust, all the work that they do to kind of help support the charitable entities they do as volunteers. There's just a real love and affection for trying to make a difference and sharing Ava's life and keeping her memory alive and engaging with fans. We recently had some folks down at the museum, and Ava Thompson, the great niece that I was telling you about, the niece and namesake, she came over and visited with them, and she's just very kind and very generous, and a real reflection of, I'm sure, what Ava would have been like in person.
That's so cool. And I'm so glad the family is passionate about keeping Ava's memory alive and being involved.
Me too. Someone asked, let's see, this came from Gary. Did she have a favorite leading man? Yes, Gregory Peck. She loved Gregory Peck. They were very close friends. They worked together 3 times. And they were close. And then later, when he married Veronique, he was very close. They were, as a couple, were very close with Ava. And when Ava passed away in 1990, the lady that was her assistant and housekeeper and all that, Carmen Vargas, actually went to live with the Pecks. And Ava loved dogs, for those of you who don't know, particularly corgis. And her last corgi was named Morgan. And when Carmen went to live with the Pecks, she brought Morgan with her. And Morgan lived out his days at the Peck's home and was buried in their backyard under a little headstone that said Morgan Gardner. And Carmen Vargas is still with us, and she lives in California and is very close with the Peck family. And the Peck family's been very kind to us, to the museum. When the museum was starting, Gregory Peck was, I think, on the kind of advisory board a little bit with the museum, and he actually visited the museum in 1992. We have a great story about that on our website, where we talk about different celebrity visitors who have visited us. And just in this past year, his daughter, Cecilia Peck, who's a filmmaker, she came to visit the museum and had a wonderful day chatting with us and telling stories and sharing things about her time and experience with the museum. So she's very engaged and has been very kind to us to spend some time with us and all of that. So, but he was definitely her favorite co-star.
We have another great question from Krista Lawler, and I think someone else, Benjamin too, probably. Were Ava Gardner and Lana Turner lifelong friends? We both know they were both married to Artie Shaw, which both of those were not great experiences, but they knew a lot of the same people. They worked at MGM together. So talk to us about their friendship.
They were great friends, and there's some fabulous photos of them together, just looking stunning, as they always did in photographs. And they did share some romantic partners. Lana may or may not have had a little fling with Mickey Rooney. She certainly was married to Artie Shaw, and she advised Ava not to marry Artie Shaw, but she did anyway. Lana had a bit of a relationship with Frank, and Ava, of course, ended up with Frank. So they shared they shared a similar taste in the fellas, I guess you could say, but that never impacted their friendship, which is really, telling of what kind of a friendship they had, that it didn't matter that they were, they both shared the same husband that were, had him at different times in their lives. But yes, they were great friends. I wish they had a chance to work together. I feel like we're all at a disservice that they never made a movie together.
Can you imagine?
Amazing.
Oh my God.
And I haven't heard any stories to know if they came close to working together, but that would have been really something, but they did stay close. And I'm sure, I don't know exactly how close they were the latter part of their lives. I know that Lana's daughter, Cheryl, has spoken kindly of Ava in her writings about them and their relationship. And I don't think they ever had a bad thing to say about each other. And Ava thought Lana was just the most glamorous star. She met Lana very early in her time at Hollywood, once she got to MGM. And she saw Lana sitting in a chair with Lana Turner written on the back, smoking a cigarette. And she thought that was the most glamorous thing she'd ever seen. And actually, the reason she started smoking, I think, was because of that influence from Lana wanting to look that glamorous. But yes, they were very close friends.
I just love that, because I think our society is constantly kind of pitting women against each other. And to me, to be two glamorous actresses competing at the same studio, the same types of men, everything, but to not be competitive and at each other's throats, but to be buddies, I think that is just like the coolest thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they, let's see, what other question?
I'm gonna pop this in the oven because it's been sitting for a bit and I don't want it to go bad. So Laura, can you take another question? And I'm gonna go ahead and start getting the oven ready here.
Let me see here. Somebody asked, Lisa Dare asked, what is my favorite, I'll say, what is my favorite book about Ava? I have 3. There's a lot of books about Ava, some with more accuracy than others. I love Ava's autobiography, which is behind me, and it's also the book that Carrie has in her display. It's called Ava, My Story. It was published posthumously, and Ava was working on it at the time of the last part of her life. That's definitely a must read if you're an Ava fan. The other 2 books, I think, again, these aren't autobiographies or biographies, but they're really neat books. This is a book called Living with Miss G, and it's by a lady named Maureen Jordan, or Renee Jordan for short. She came to work with Ava in the late 40s and stayed with her for many years and worked with her, helped kind of as an assistant and various roles and responsibilities that Ava needed. And they were very much bosom buddies with each other. They got along famously. They, Ava, talking about kind of Ava being, doing things just because they were right and not because anybody was looking. There were instances where Renee would be, they would go to a club or something like that, and Renee, the owner of the club or the bouncer would try to not let Renee in or tell Renee to leave because she was African American, and Ava would say, "Well, if you want me here, Renee stays, or if you don't let, we're going to go somewhere else, Renee." She would, come to her defense, and Ava viewed her more than somebody who worked for her, viewed her as a sister. And they were incredibly close for the rest of their lives. And Renee wrote this book after Ava's passing, and it tells the story of just their time together. And it's just a fascinating book, and it's got a lot of great anecdotes of the different people that were in and out of Ava's lives, the people she worked with, the films she made. And it's just kind of a bird's eye view of everything that happened in Ava's life from the perspective of somebody who was her companion and friend. That's a really great book. And then the third book I would recommend, this is especially if you're coming to North Carolina and want to know about Ava's upbringing and life and what it was like with her family. There's this book called Grabtown Girl that was written by a local North Carolina journalist named Beth Cannon. And Doris Rollins Cannon. Sorry, Beth is her daughter. And I've just been we've been emailing with her lately. But anyway, Grabtown Girl is a book about Ava Gardner's roots and connections to North Carolina. And it tells stories from her early childhood all the way through her passing and the establishment of the museum. And it's just a really great book with some neat little stories. And one I've shared before, but I'll share again that's in this. It talks about one of the last times Ava came home to North Carolina, she attended a high school reunion where she was the guest of honor at Rock Ridge High School, which is where she graduated from in the little community of Rock Ridge outside of Wilson, North Carolina. And she, the week before, the day before, she flew from Monaco, where she had been attending the wedding of Grace Kelly's daughter, Princess Grace's daughter, and flew from Monaco to North Carolina and went to this very rural, unincorporated community to go to a high school reunion. So it just kind of shows the extremes of Ava's life, that she would be, hanging out with the royal family in Monaco one day, and the next day she would be in rural North Carolina attending a high school reunion. And it's just, there's a lot more to the story, but it's in this book. So all of these are available through the gift shop, by the way, at the museum. So those are my top three.
Excellent. And Craig Marquis wants to know, where can I find this recipe? Well, I'm going to post it after the episode. I will download this video and post it to HollywoodKitchenShow.com. And Laura, there is a treasure trove of Ava recipes at avagardner.org, right?
Yes, we have, as I mentioned earlier, we have a blog post last year during the pandemic. Over the summer, we thought, well, everybody's home and everybody's cooking. Let's share some recipes. So we pulled some from the collection that were specifically ones that came from the family. And there's about maybe like 10 or 12, I can't remember how many we ended up posting, but they're all under the moniker of Cooking with Ava. And if you decide to make any of these and share them on social, please tag Hollywood Kitchen and tag Cooking with Ava, or tag us with the museum, because we'd love to see your photos and share those. But there's a handful of recipes, and those are some of the ones we've been pulling from when I've been joining Carrie on the show. So there's a lot there, and we're working on it. We're working on something at the museum.
I was just going to ask you about that, because in desperation for more of Ava recipes, I went on eBay and got a very, very old spiral bound copy of Cooking with Ava Gardner on eBay for like $15. But this was, I think, from the museum a very long time ago. So are you guys working on a new Ava?
We're working on it. Yeah, we're hoping, that would be part of, you're hearing it here first. I hope it's okay that I say this, but we're working on it being part of our centennial, kind of one of our things that we're doing for Ava Centennial. and doing an updated version of that book with a lot more recipes. That book, it's a really neat book. It is called Cooking with Ava, and it was produced by the museum. I'm not sure how many years ago, but it was a book that included some of the family recipes, but also recipes from Ava advocates, supporters of the museum, people affiliated with the museum. So it was kind of a combination, largely Southern dishes. It's got a lot of great dishes in there, but we're looking at doing an updated edition of it because it's been out of print for a long time. And we've been getting requests from folks like Carrie and others to do more, share more recipes. So we are working on an updated version of that will have some additional stories in it and kind of go into a lot more detail about Ava's life and connections to home and cooking and love of cooking and food and fellowship and all of that kind of thing. So so we're working on that. So fingers crossed that we'll meet that time frame, but we're hoping end of next year that we'll have that out.
Because I would personally love that. I would buy it in a heartbeat.
I would love it too.
Pictures and stories and antidotes. Because again, Ava is, as I've said it before, the gift that we'll never stop giving.
Absolutely. Well, are there any other questions? Let's see.
Yeah, let's take like one more question. All right, we've already gotten people on here commenting they want to order the cookbook. So there is demand. There is demand.
I know. Please follow us on social and we'll keep you updated on that. We're
now
working.
The cookbook will be, as my dad said, like fishing in a trout pond. It will be easy to sell this cookbook. Very easy.
Let's see. I'm sure there are more questions. I hope I've gotten them all.
By the way, if you wanted to, Laura, later on, if you want to log in and maybe in writing answer any questions that pop up on Facebook, that would be great.
Yeah, and just to kind of come back to Noirvember, we're working on a blog post that's going to probably come out hopefully next week, certainly by the end of the month, about Ava's film noir. We already have two other posts, one about the bride that goes into a lot of detail and shares some artifacts from the collection on the website. We also have one about the killers, but we're working on just a quick little comprehensive list of all the ones that we talked about today that she appeared in. And you can find those for some good Noirvember viewing this month. So yes, lots of things going on.
I'm going to do an Ava blog post for HollywoodKitchenShow.com after we log off here. I'll work on that. And when it goes up, I'll post about it. But at the very bottom, I'm going to put my list of movie picks, some of my favorite Ava movies. So when you have eaten a lot of pecan pie and other great Thanksgiving food, when you're in the food coma, get these Ava Gardner movies, put them on and enjoy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's been wonderful today. If there, like you said, I'll log in later. And if there's other questions that come up or people have questions after this is posted on YouTube, I'll be happy to log in and try to answer all that I can. In the meantime, follow us, go to our website and come see us. Come to the museum.
Yes, come to North Carolina.
Come say hello.
Yes. Laura, you've been so generous once again in giving me your time and your expertise. I know everybody's probably really appreciated having you live this time so we can answer questions. And stay tuned because there's definitely going to be more Ava Gardner episodes in the future. Absolutely. And Laura, thank you so much for joining me. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. I hope you make the pie. Again, send us your photos, tag us in your photos, and stay tuned for more food, fun, and film history from Hollywood Kitchen.
Bye.
Bye.